Welcome to Studio Chat, an entertainment talk show covering movies, TV, music, and more. Chelsea here with a special guest who's not only part of the legacy of the iconic show Dallas in the character of Phyllis, but also a talented singer and voice artist. Deborah Tranelli, thank you for joining me.
I'm so happy to be with you finally. I'm sorry it didn't work out when we were in Los Angeles together, but maybe this is a little bit better because I got you 100% and you got me 100%. So
Exactly. Face to face, even from other states. It's all good.
right across the country. Yes.
Yes. Well, it is wonderful to speak with you. I was very happy to meet you at the recent Dallas reunion at the Hollywood show. So, can you start off by telling us a bit about how the reunion experience was for you?
I mean, I was telling people it's kind of beyond words. We truly have not been on the air for 33 years. So many of us hadn't, you know, several of us had not seen each other very much. I mean, I moved back to the East Coast within a few years after the series was over. I'd stayed in touch with a few people, but most of us had not seen each other. And it was a show reunion, but more importantly, it was just like a big family reunion. It was those big, oh my gosh, kind of hugs and happiness. And I can't say enough about just how wonderful, beyond words, wonderful it was, especially to see my dear Patrick.
That's right. Yeah, you had a personal reunion of your own with your former TV boss, but also your friend Patrick
Um,
Duffy, who played Bobby Ewing. When was the last time you had seen him? Was it another Dallas reunion scenario?
I was not able to be or was not part of any of the other reunions, mostly because I was on the East Coast and working. So I literally have not seen him since we finished the show.
Oh, wow.
I had,
Okay.
I had I had sent messages and been in touch different ways, but we had not, been face to face or seen each other. So needless to say, there were a couple of tears shed, happy tears when we saw each other. So
Absolutely. That's so sweet. It was a fantastic immersive experience. I mean, they decorated the hallway, South
oh,
Fork Ranch. They put the living room
unbelievable.
with Jock's portrait, music playing. They made an immersive experience for the fans, but also it was great to capture a couple of those moments with the cast, reuniting and just having fun.
Right. Well, I mean, they really did a beautiful job of setting our room apart, which just made it very special. But, we had fans coming in from all over the world, all over the country, just to this show, just to see us. And I think some of it was because we hadn't, been together. And unfortunately, not everybody could be there.
Of course.
Larry was definitely there in spirit. We could feel that.
I
And some
believe so
people
too.
couldn't be there. But I mean, to have 25 cast members was quite remarkable. So yeah, it was just a special time for all of us. And I don't know if you've seen the group photo of all of us. It was like a class reunion.
Huge. I know. I remember when I first read that they were going to do that, all 25 people, one picture, and I was genuinely like, how are they going to make that
I
happen?
know.
I'm so
And fit in the
curious.
people who were taking their picture with us.
Exactly. Just
I think it was something like, oh, I don't know, 45, something like that, people who had pictures taken with us. I can't even remember the number now. It
or
was
yeah,
remarkable.
definitely.
So,
It's amazing. And it was
yeah.
fun to see the Ewing Oil Secretary reunion in
Oh,
a
it's
sense as
great.
well.
I think we did more pictures with the three of us with people than we did individually. And we certainly were busy for those 2 days, but it was so much fun. And people really, it was very touching that they have genuine emotion for, sort of the supporting cast, or as some people call it, like the backbone. And they would come up and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. You were the ones who ran Ewing Oil. You're the ones who
Yes.
kept it going while they were off doing whatever they were doing. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
That was my first thought. I think when I saw you, I'm pretty sure I said the same thing. You were the real power
Yes,
behind Ewing Oil because really, I mean, that's the thing about the Ewing Oil secretaries. I think was so interesting is it wasn't, I guess, the typical quote unquote secretary role where it's just a few lines. They're just kind of over there. You don't notice them. I think that they were prominent roles. Came forward. They had a lot of things to do, a lot of things to say, and more so than again the typical secretary role. But I believe you were the longest running secretary any Ewing had. You were there for almost the entire run of the show. There were a few other
yeah,
secretaries in the first few seasons, but I think they quickly discovered that Phyllis was the one that kept everything running
that's
smoothly, the
right.
real power. So tell me
I
how you.
refer,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I refer to myself as, for people who are old enough to know, or old television savvy. It's like, Perry Mason with Della Street.
Yeah.
I was sort of Bobby. Phyllis was Bobby's Della Street, always there, always loyal.
Absolutely.
always faithful and always concerned about his well-being. Actually came, Deborah Rennard, who played Sly, and I both replaced the original secretaries. And then Danone Simpson came in as Kendall in the outer office.
Mhm.
So, I was first, and then Deb came on shortly thereafter, and then Danone. So we were all around within a 10-year period, but we had numbers because there were two Deborahs and a Danone. So we joke about, we call ourselves, D3, because our beloved producer, Len Katzman, instead of trying to call out our names, would go D1, D2, D3, or by our character names, just because it was easier to keep track of us. Because if you said Deborah, of course, two of us would go, yes.
Like, right, which one? That's
Which
so
one?
cute.
Or the brunette one, because they were blondes. They're blondes, and I'm the brunette. So
True.
there you
Yeah.
go. Had to have a brunette secretary in there.
Yeah, no, definitely another way in which you stood out. That's great. So tell me how you first arrived to the set and stepped into the role of Phyllis to begin with.
I'm originally from the East Coast, from upstate New York and Schenectady. I went to school in the Midwest, Northwestern University, as a theater major. So I was there for school, and then lived in Chicago for 3 years after that, and had every plan to go to New York, theater, musical theater. And I had friends who had moved out to Los Angeles and were involved in casting and agents and various aspects of television and film production, who were encouraging me to come out. So being a typical, mid-20s, I went, okay. So I had just finished doing a show, a long-running musical, and got a car and packed it up and literally drove by myself from Chicago to LA. A dear friend of mine who I stayed with for a while was in casting, and she introduced me to an agent. This role was opening up on Dallas. He said, "I'm just going to send you out, see how you do, just to give you a trial. It's your first audition out here." And a few days later, I found out I'd gotten the role. And about a month to the day that I arrived in LA, I filmed my first episode. And it was just me in the office with, at that time, Luella, who was JR's secretary, in a tiny little
Yes.
office space. And my first scene, very short one, was with Larry, was with, JR. Came in, said good morning, didn't know who I was. I told him, Connie's ill, I'm just her temp for the day. And he said, well, welcome to Ewing Oil. And that was pretty much it. And I'm having fun because I pulled some pictures for you, but like, this would be early
Ah.
Phillips. I even had my nameplate, which disappeared, and I never found it. And I felt so badly, but that's a lot of hair. But that's probably one of my, not the first episode, because my hair was all in a big updo bun, lots of hair back in those days.
I love
But
it.
but that was my first scene. So they always called us first to the set. We always joked about the fact that we were the first in the makeup chair, because we were supporting cast, and they could get us done and finished, and we'd have makeup and rollers, and then they'd call lunch. But um,
And then
so
just wait.
right, it was a whole new experience. I hadn't really done television before, getting into the makeup room before the sun was up, and had my hair and makeup done, and then was lit on set, and in walks, Larry Hagman, who was lovely. I was nervous, but back then it was still early enough in the series. I had come on just after JR had been shot. So
Oh,
that was the
yes.
season of Who Shot JR. Excuse me, I got a little tickle today.
Okay.
Um, anyway, so I don't think because I was a theater person, I was not watching television on Friday night. I was on a stage somewhere. And because we didn't have means of recording television back then,
Right.
um, back in the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, I knew about the show, but I had no idea the
Okay.
impact and what I was a part of until I really got there and understood. Um, and obviously, was on till the next to last episode. So
Yes, which is an amazing run. And what a time to come in too, because they left that cliffhanger of Who Shot JR, such a hype about it. Everyone tuned into the very next season to see what happened. So I feel like
absolutely,
that
and
was
they
perfect
hadn't solved it.
timing.
All right, they hadn't solved it by then, so we still didn't know who. And I
Right.
remember, Mary Crosby,
Mhm.
who came in, and Kristen, who came into the office even in one scene, but this was before they'd solved it. So it was, yeah, it was quite a phenomenon. And of course, we became the creator sort of the cliffhanger. So, at the end of the series, when we came back the next season, we wouldn't have any information except, pages, basically, because they just didn't want scripts getting out.
Of
So
course.
we wouldn't necessarily know any more than anybody else, but people certainly tried very hard to
Oh,
get information from us.
of course. No, that's why that was what I was curious to ask you, is if you guys had any clue. Were you guessing amongst yourselves trying to figure it out?
Um, I suppose we did, we wondered, but once again, no clues, just like,
Right.
the famous, Bobby slash Patrick coming back, after being gone for a year. What were they going to do? How were they going to do it? We did talk about that one a lot. And when we found out with how they were going to finally do it, we were like, well, that's television. That's a nighttime soap opera. If people want someone back badly enough, however they come back.
It's so true. That is, soap operas and day or nighttime. That's something that's unique to it, that they can pretty much just do whatever they want. I feel like with other types of
Right.
shows, people might question a little bit more, but when soap opera is just like, oh, yep, it's a soap opera. They're gonna make it work out, whatever story they want.
Well, in daytime, they come back as twins or, who
Yeah.
knows what. Long lost twins, resurrected.
Very true. Now, of course, you mentioned, I mean, your first day on set with Larry Hagman, of course, the big star already, and then the star of the show. I think it's so funny that I've heard nothing but wonderful things about Larry Hagman. And then I actually, grew up watching I Dream of Jeannie. So I knew him as
Oh, of
Tony
course.
Nelson, very lovable, very funny. And then to come to see him as JR, this just absolutely
Right.
terrible, insufferable character, was just shocking to me. It was a weird contrast because I'm so used to seeing Larry Hagman and laughing and enjoying, and then you're just like, man, I can't stand you sometimes, which proves
Well,
how
he
wonderful an
was
actor he is, that he could portray that so
absolutely,
effectively.
absolutely that he could turn it on a dime,
Yeah.
I think that really is a true test to his ability. I mean, when you think about how the series originally started, which was more about Bobby
Mhm.
and
It was.
Pam and sort of the Romeo and Juliet, different sides of the tracks. And then you had the sort of Cain and Abel brother kind of relationship that just got more and more popular, with JR and Bobby and their difference of how they wanted to run the business. And of course, you have Jock, who unfortunately I never got to work with and who was very ill by the time I, came onto the series, although did meet him a couple of times, that it wasn't a big fancy splashy soap opera as it came to be. I think Dynasty sort of pushed it into a different, level. But it was a family drama. It was an oil
Definitely.
cadder who hit it big, and then his son's basically taking over the company, and poor Miss Ellie trying to keep peace in the family and everything else. But people really, I mean, it's amazing to me that people are watching it again, have rewatched it. They, of course, we always joke about the fact that they know more than we do because they are the students almost of the series by watching it over and over again, and now a next generation and a next generation.
So
Um,
true. Yes.
so
I mean,
yeah,
especially the fact that it's on streaming services now. You can literally binge watch a series start to
oh
finish. You
yeah,
used to have to wait for those cliffhangers, and now I can just go click and
yes.
see what happened, which is crazy.
And we did a lot of episodes back then. It's one
Yes.
hour film, so they were long shooting days, 6.5 days. And if we did, I think one season we did maybe 32 episodes. I mean, it was a full year of filming, very little time off. So, um, not that the supporting characters were necessarily on, as often as the main characters, but it was a full year's time. So it was we were fortunate enough that we could also be free to do other shows as well. I mean, I did a lot of guest star shots on other television shows and commercials and my music and everything else. But it was just, wonderful. It was a comfortable come home kind of feeling every time we worked together. So,
Definitely, that's wonderful. Well, that's another topic. I'm glad you brought up the other opportunities that you had as well, because something specific I'm excited to ask you about, mostly because I grew up watching the original show from the 70s, was your appearance on Match Game 90. That was so
ah,
much fun to see you. You did such a great job. So I'm curious
thank
how that came
you.
about, and also your experiences being on kind of the new take on the classic game show.
First of all, I loved watching. I'm a game show person. I love
Cool.
watching, and I do have a somewhat competitive streak. Not as much as some people have on those shows, but it match game. You have a PR person. They find you through your agents. it was just something that I had told them that I was interested in doing. I also did Password too,
Yes.
with Bert Convy. Um, it was so much fun to do those. You film them, very quickly. Match Game was a lot of fun because to me, I was with royalty on mine. I mean, I had, you know, um, Charles Nelson Riley, I had Brett Summers, I had Vicki Lawrence, in the back row behind me, like I was, I was truly in game show royalty, and we had so much fun.
Definitely.
And
That's
also Password was a lot of fun. I did finally get it. I did get into the chair, at the end
yeah.
for the quick round, but I love doing those game shows. Thank you for bringing that up.
Of course, no, I was happy to discover it actually when I was doing a little background research. I was like, oh my goodness, Match Game, because I actually never really watched the Match Game 90 as much because I feel like the
Right.
classic one is what they show more often.
Oh,
So
absolutely, with
when I
Gene
saw
Rayburn and that whole group, but
exactly, yeah, but the
just,
90 one is so much fun as well. And the fact that they brought, the classic pair there, Brett Summers and Charles
right?
Nelson Riley back for the 90s, it's perfect.
It was great. And, I mean, to them, it was, they had done it for so many years, had so much
Yes.
fun with it. The only one that would have been fun that I never got to do was I never got to do Hollywood Squares. Not that I was ever necessarily going to be considered, but I always thought that would be a lot of fun to do too. They seem to have
Definitely.
so much fun.
Yeah, Hollywood Squares got crazy too, and especially when they did the Match Game Hollywood Squares, pairing up hour there, that
Right.
got really fun. Definitely. Well, speaking of game shows, I also just saw an episode of Hollywood Squares the other day, one of the newer ones, the 90s, 2000s era,
Right.
and it had John Ritter on it. So I want to transition that into talking about your Three's Company episode. Now you see it, now you don't.
Oh, I love
Jessica
it. I
Barish.
just happen to have a picture from it. Let me show you.
Ah, perfect.
There's the wonderful John
Yes.
Ritter. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I I can't say enough about how wonderful it was to work with him. We might have talked about it a little bit when you came and said hi at the table, but he was just so much fun. He was so kind. He was so supportive. We had his brother and my brother had cerebral palsy, so we discussed, having a special needs sibling. Um, and also the gentleman who played my father was Reid Shelton, and he was the original Daddy Warbucks on Broadway. So I mean, talk about musical theater royalty there. Um, and I just loved working with him. I love that was my first sitcom, and I loved the fact that sitcom is so close to doing theater, where you have the table read and then you do the blocking, and because of three camera, it feels very much like you have more freedom physically than you did with single camera film.
Mm.
Um, and of course, I ran into him many times over the years. As a matter of fact, I auditioned for his short-lived series Hooperman. I don't know if you remember that, where he was a building super, and he was very instrumental in helping me prepare for that, and kind of advocating for me. And then I would run into him just in Los Angeles here and there, and he always remembered me kindly. And it was so sad to lose him so young.
Of course. Yeah, I
He
mean,
was
people
great.
definitely still talk about him and remember him just as we do Larry Hagman and a lot of other fantastic performers that we've lost. But as long as we keep talking about them, remembering
Well,
them,
we have
that's
we
that's what
have
we
their
can
work,
do.
right? We
Exactly.
can continue to have them in our lives. I think that's I'm a theater person. I love theater, but I think the one gift that is special about television or film or video, whatever, is that we have the gift that stays with us, right? It's and
True.
any celluloid, as they would say, we still have to enjoy and treasure is important. So,
Absolutely, I agree. But I
and we
do
remain forever young.
Of course. No, it's very, there is a great contrast between the two because there is that kind of preservation of film and television, and theater is very much in the moment, fleeting in a sense sometimes.
Right.
And if the performance isn't recorded, for example, and in a sense that makes it another type of special performance because you're living in that moment for that moment with the people who are in the room, and it may not be recorded, you may never see that again, but you had that experience together with those people. So I'd love to hear more about your theater experiences. You've performed in so many productions, you've won multiple Bistro awards for jazz and cabaret artists. So take us a little into your live performance world and what that means to you.
Well, I mean, that's where I started, in high school. Well, actually, I did my first show I was 13 and I was Louisa in The Sound of Music and with our local
Ah,
Idaho company in Schenectady. So that was my first. I had been singing, doing a lot of choral singing and solo singing, but that was my first taste of really the two worlds meeting, the dramatic and as an actor and as a singer. And I think acting is vitally important as a singer. You're telling a story, you're still communicating. It's just with a heightened aspect of music.
yes.
And so I had that experience, and that's took me to Northwestern, where I did 20 shows as a theater major, both musical and non. Had a wonderful education there, and as I said, was preparing to go east. Landed in Los Angeles for many years, although I did some shows. So when I got back onto the East Coast and started auditioning, I started getting more work on the East Coast than the West Coast, and that's when I made the permanent move back back to the East Coast. My family still up in was still up in Schenectady, but I was in New York. So I love theater because I love cabaret and I love concert work because there is that immediate connection. I mean, we're fortunate enough they do allow an archival recording of a show, but it's not out there in the same way unless people bootleg, and that's a whole other thing. But there is that sort of living, breathing relationship, and it's different every night, even though you rehearse and you run it. Every audience is its own has its own characteristics. So
Definitely.
that's what's really wonderful. I mean, I've done, oh gosh, I mean, I've gotten to do some of the greatest roles. I've done Aldonza and Man of La Mancha. I've done Dorothy Brock in 42nd Street. I've done the Full Monty. I've done Dames at Sea. Um, uh, Kismet. I've done. I'm looking because I have to remember all the shows. I did my most recent one was I did Marge and Bridges in Madison County, which is a musical version of the movie, which is a fabulous show. I've just gotten to do. Well, I got to do Elsa and The Sound of Music. I unfortunately skipped Maria and went from Louisa to Elsa, but with the Tulsa Opera Company. But I've toured the country, in concert. Right after the show ended, I did a tour with Columbia concert with Columbia Artists Concert Series, and I did the end of '91 for several, like 11 weeks, 72 concerts in 26 states
Wow.
on a bus.
That that doesn't seem physically possible, but
Well, you do it. Well, we didn't have to walk it, so,
fair
but
enough.
it was a wonderful experience, and it drove me toward wanting to get more and more into my music. And there was a wonderful concert series called the Lyrics and Lyricists that's at the 92nd Street Y. I've had the great opportunity to sing at Carnegie Hall 3 times, the Kennedy Center twice. I've really had some wonderful opportunities as a singer as well, and that led to my wanting to do. I've done um, other people's compilation albums, recorded for many songwriters, but I got to do my own CD, for which I did win. Thank you for saying that, a Bistro Award for Outstanding Album, and I'm going to show that to you because people can
Yes.
get this. So it's called A Lot of Living.
Beautiful. Mhm.
I like my blue dress picture,
Very
but
cute. Yes, I love it.
they can get it on. It's streaming, Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music and all the rest. But it was a wonderful labor of love and talent, involved with several musical directors. I was involved with every aspect of the arrangements and the mixing and the sweetening and everything. So I'm happy that people still enjoy it. And I actually had some people come up to me in LA who said, I know you've done all the television and all the film and everything, but I know you as a singer. I've seen you in New York many times. And I said, and you came all the way out here? And they said, yep, wouldn't
Oh,
have missed it.
very
So,
nice. Mm.
it's a very intimate relationship when you do cabaret shows. I mean, there's no place to hide. It's like this. There is there's something wonderful and special about that. And I've been very fortunate to do it all, in the business. And I also do a lot of, as you said, I do a lot of voiceover work, narration, animation, um, did probably more commercials, on camera commercials, than I did any television in LA. So, and then I came east and I still did a Law and Order and a couple of independent films, and still working in that medium as well.
Very cool. Well, I love that you kind of had a full circle movement of, starting on the East Coast around that Broadway theater environment, and then
Mhm.
just kind of gradually made your way to the West, found the TV film, and then just found your way right back into theater again. It's just such a fun transition. And it shows, how powerful theater really is because it does pull you back in. Like I was a theater kid myself, and
Oh,
I always
good.
feel the urge for it and, going back to it and everything.
Do you still do you still audition or have any
I've actually kind
aspirations?
of restarted auditioning. I hadn't done theater in a number of years. I focused more on music because I also sing. I play some instruments as well. So I've been focusing more on the music side, getting a band started here in LA and all that sort of side of things. But I'm definitely feeling the acting bug, as they say, the urge coming back to just kind of throw myself out there for a few auditions soon, I think.
I mean, when I was there just weren't as many opportunities for theater, and there certainly are more in LA now, and that's really nice. I mean,
Sure.
other than the big, like the Taper and the larger theaters, which and many of them were bringing in tours. It's interesting because I auditioned actually for a show that Holly Near, wonderful songwriter Holly Near, was producing at the Taper and auditioned, and I connected with the man who was her musical director and played the show named John Bacchino. Well, full talk about full circle. So I decide I'm going to move to New York. I kind of for 2 years tried to be bi-coastal, but it became easier and more lucrative to be in New York. And I called John and it gave me back then, it gave me a forwarding number. And I said, "Where are you?" And he goes, "I'm in New York." And I said, "You're in New York?" He goes, "Yeah, I just moved here." So fast forward, I ended up doing recording, doing a show with him, a cabaret show of his music, um, recording songs, and I have two of his songs on my CD.
Ah, very
So you
cool.
just never. It's such an amazing world that even if you do something like a series and then you don't see each other, you're still connecting. Even if you don't see them, you've worked with someone who worked with them or knows them, or it's kind of almost timeless. I mean, decades go by, and yet there we all were, active and looking fantastic. I thought I was just amazed at how great everybody looked, and we have a genuine affection for that time in our lives. And
Yes.
I think that's one of the things about the performing arts, and I'm glad that you're get digging your toes in there a little bit because I do think there is, even if even if people don't end up doing it for a living, if they have a desire, if they have an avocation to at least have music or theater or writing or whatever it is in their lives, the arts are so important. They feed a
Absolutely.
part of our soul just as much as science and math and everything else. I think it's wonderful to be exposed to everything.
I 100% agree. And you're talking about how Dallas and that reunion and everything, and that's a fond time in all of your lives, but it's a fond time for the fans too. The ones who were seeing it in real time are having that reunion with you in that sense because
Right.
they feel attached to those characters. And then even somebody who didn't see it originally, like myself, but came to it later on, still
Right.
feels that connection. And walking through the hallway and seeing all of you, and like you do look exactly the same. Like you, it's amazing. All of you, it's like you know who's who. Obviously, just looking at you. I mean, everybody did look great. Everybody was feeling great. It was definitely an awesome times to have together. So I kind of want to
Well,
come back. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one thing about a
Yeah.
reunion, like surprise reunions. So I'm sitting there, and I'm one of the amazing things that I got to do was to be on Circus of the Stars, which is no longer, but I was on 13, Lucky 13. I flew on the trapeze. And it was an amazing 3.5 months of my life and getting an opportunity to do that. I'm sitting signing a photograph for someone, and all of a sudden I see this photo album plunk down on my desk in front of me. And I hear a voice say, "Do you remember giving this to me?" And I look up, and it was a handmade. I had made this cover of this photo album, and it was one of my trainers from Circus of the
Ah.
Stars, Richie Guyona, who is from a long line of an amazing flying family. And I mean, I just burst into tears, and he was like, "No, no, no, don't cry."
Aw.
He said it's been overwhelming, but he came. He lives down in Florida, but he came, he to see me, and we spent time together. So it was like reunion after reunion. It was a wonderful experience. I didn't mean to go off track, but
No,
there's always some
absolutely.
bonus reunions too.
Of course, that's wonderful. These are the stories that we want to hear. Of course, it's wonderful. Obviously Dallas was a focal point, but hearing all the stories surrounding it and also other aspects of your performing arts life is really cool.
Thank you.
Mm.
Well, I mean, I was fortunate, and I landed Dallas, and then I landed a Near a Wolf and a Heart to Heart, and a Three's Company, and I did a film, and I mean, it was wonderful because although we weren't signed to contracts, they were very generous that if we did have a project that came up, that they would work around us, which was a great gift to us. But it was just a great opportunity. It was a focal point, but it didn't define us. That, all of us had other aspects of our careers that we were always working on and were encouraged. And we also supported each other. I was always doing, cabaret work, and people would come and bring a big group to come and hear me sing, or I would go and see somebody else in a show, whatever it was. So,
Very good. Yes, I mean that brings me to, some other questions I had just about the rapport of the cast off camera as well, and how much time you spent with everyone when you were not on set.
well, I mean, I would say probably for the most part, because they were long days, everybody came in, we had a great time, and everybody went home to their families.
Fair enough.
But, in terms of, I would say the other secretaries slash, executive assistants, which we became because that was the timely title.
Yes.
Deborah Rennard and Danone and I and Sherilyn Katzman, who sadly passed away very young. We hung out together. If we were all filming that day, we would go out together. We'd be in makeup and maybe rollers, but we'd go have lunch together. And we would do things. So one year, Larry threw a big Super Bowl party at his house. Um, Occasionally, Larry and Patrick would take one of us, out to lunch to kind of tell us how much they loved us and don't ask for any more money because Lorimar, don't ask for more money. We like you. We don't want to lose you. That's no secret. We talk about that. Barbara Bel Geddes did an episode with us where we were helping her use the computer to do research. And when we came back, and we did the scene, we went to lunch, we came back, and in every one of our dressing rooms, there was a bouquet of flowers saying that she was so happy to finally get a chance to play with us and
Aw.
do the scene. Patrick sent me roses, a beautiful bouquet of roses one time. I mean, we had a lot of laughs. We laughed a lot. Larry and Patrick were, just would misbehave just like brothers. One of my favorite things is that they would do is if there was a scene where they were coming into the office, and of course the elevator is just two panels that slide back and forth. And without fail, when the cameras would roll or we'd do rehearsal and they would slide them open, they would be on their knees as if the elevator hadn't made it all the way up
My
to the floor
goodness.
and look at each other, with those devilish, looks with each other. And we go, okay, let's do that again. But they were so supportive and so kind. And for a lot of us, this was our early, television experience where they obviously were, had a lot more experience in the business than we did. So they were always very helpful with us in terms of, just you're hitting your mark and camera angles, and if they felt we could get a better take, they would encourage, giving us an opportunity for another take. And that happened on several of my other guest star appearances too. When you're walking onto somebody else's set and they know how things are lit and how it would be better, and they always were supportive. And Robert Wagner, for one, when I was on Heart to Heart, was really lovely about that. As was um, John Ritter when we were doing, Three's Company, because that was my first sitcom experience. So,
Right. And of course it's different setting, different studios, different
right.
atmosphere, and
Different
especially, yeah,
producers, different
sitcom, much more lighthearted.
directors. Yeah. Yeah. And we always, made an effort when someone was coming onto our show to be supportive and say, to be prepared. They may do this, or don't be surprised if this happens. Just go with it, and to make them, because they were coming into our home. So it was important
Yes.
to make everybody who came in, and my goodness, what a cast list of people coming into our show. It was
So many all the
unbelievable.
time.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the opportunities of working not just with the main cast, but with, guest stars like, Alexis Smith and Donna Reed and Barbara Eden was phenomenal. And then when Priscilla Presley came onto the series, I mean, it was just leaving out a lot of wonderful names, and I apologize for that. But there were just so many fantastic I think I said Howard Keel. Oh, you know, MGM
Yes.
musical star. It just goes, the list goes on and on, besides our incredible stable cast.
Yes, Howard Keel was an interesting character that they brought on because he did come from that musical theater world, which is a characteristic that you both share. But the fact that
Right.
they brought him on as what seemed like just kind of a supporting character, and then he ended up staying way longer than anyone expects, and then
Yeah.
marries Miss Ellie, stays on even
Oh, Miss
longer. It was
Ellie's
a
heart.
whole yes, exactly. It was a whole storyline I think no one saw coming, which was really cool. But I mean, he's such a wonderful performer that it was a great role.
It was a huge deal in his life because he had been, the star of MGM, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and
Yes.
Kismet, and on and on and on. And he did a lot of concerts, and then things kind of changed. That whole era of film and the movie business changed so much. It really restarted his concert career. I mean, who can have that voice that deep? I can't even get close to it.
Yes.
He'd come in the makeup room and I'd say, "Good morning, Howard. Good morning, Deborah. How are you?" With that voice of his. Um, it's so elegant. And he insisted that he wasn't going to replace, it wasn't another Jock Ewing. He was going to be a completely different character who
Definitely.
stole Miss Sally's heart. So,
That's wonderful. Now, we also talked, of course, about the Who Shot JR and the cliffhanger. That's the major storyline that everybody thinks of when it comes to Dallas. But
right.
to you, what were some other memorable storylines, whether you were personally involved or had a role in them or not, just kind of memorable storylines that really you enjoyed or just thought were very striking?
Well, I mean, I really appreciated from personally any opportunity that I had to have, a personal moment with between Bobby and Phyllis. When he was going through his divorce and I was there supporting him.
Yeah.
When we went out and, just had a drink together as normal people, and have those confidences and to build that trust, to have that kind of relationship. Anytime we had that opportunity was wonderful. I mean, when he was gone that year, with the scene, that wonderful scene, I didn't speak a word. It was just my reaction to him being hit by the car and dying.
Yes.
It was such a lovely moment, and it was handled beautifully. And when April, was in that horrible explosion in Paris and we were all shocked and devastated. Moments when we oh I when it was April's wedding shower and the secretaries actually got to go to the wedding shower and have a moment, um, the intrigue, all of the intrigue. I mean, of I never was blackmailed because that was not ever going to be my storyline. But all the blackmail. I loved that as much as I missed Patrick, that when Victoria came in, she advocated for continuing to have me there and for us to have some really nice scenes together.
Yes.
Anytime that women were shown, because we're talking the 80s, anytime women were shown to be smart and savvy businesswomen, I
Yes.
always appreciated that. That never underestimate um, the
I agree.
humor, the humorous moments when we got to have a little fun. Um, there's just the playful moments that we got to have. I loved the relationship that Sly and Phyllis had, unless our bosses were going at it, and so there was always a little tension between us. Um, but we talk about that we had a kind of a language too with each other, and I always enjoyed that. So, and the devil, just the fun. Even anybody who was even wicked and devilish, there was just something fun about it too. We didn't lose the audience because of that.
Exactly. No, that's
I
that's
think we
what's
could
really
all. I think
fun.
we would all say that we don't miss the huge shoulder pads that we had, and the big hair that we had.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing about a show that was on through the course of 3 decades. I mean, the end of the 70s, the full 80s, and a little bit of the early 90s is all of the styles and transitions and things that happened with the hair, everything, because you guys were on television, you were a focal point of fashion and hairstyles and everything as things were coming out. I'm sure they probably tried things out on you as it was going along in the times
Well,
there.
absolutely. And I think when Dynasty came on and it was more glam, they felt that we needed to glam up. I was going to. I'm having fun with pictures. I hope you don't
Yes, I
mind.
love it.
And we
I'm
saw the
pleased
first
to.
picture, and then this was later.
Yes.
Which a lot of people said you look like Sue Ellen, and of course I was always thinking, oh, I could secretly be Sue Ellen's sister, and no one knows, and I could
Ah.
information about Jr. It's just the look of that. I have pictures here. I'll show you. That's this to
Oh.
me. It's Patrick and Larry. The old
Perfect.
Peck bad boys, that they were so impish and so sweet. This was taken in the living room. And once in a while we actually got to go out. Once in a while we actually went down to Dallas and did scenes down there. But we got to go to a fancy. They invited us. They included us, I guess is what I'm saying. So that was a lot of fun. And my favorite, Patrick and I were at an event together, and I love that picture. So I
Very,
just,
very nice.
but I've always felt, I mean, I used to do silly voices and voice impressions. And so Patrick would always ask me to do, those. So um, that was a lot of fun too. We've always said it should have been a comedy or a musical. The outtake reels, could have been an entire series unto them, but it was also a tight ship and we got things done. When work was going to be done, it was done. And we worked with so many wonderful directors. Um, and of course Leonard Katzman among them, and actors. Our actors all directed them as well. And Ken Kercheval directed um, my final. Actually, Deborah Rennard's in my final episode when I got to tell Jr. Off basically. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, "Okay, say the line," which was, "Jr. I've been meaning to tell you this for a long time. Hell would have to freeze over before I'd ever work for you." So a lot of people loved that I got to tell
Absolutely.
JR off. I said, well, it was kind of fun. And Ken Kercheval had fun directing that.
Oh,
So
I bet. Yeah. No, that's fun. No, I mean that is especially impactful because, when Sly came in as JR's secretary, when they first introduced her, part of me was like, who would be JR's secretary, man? And then even she was in on some of the stuff. She saw some of the stuff, devious things that he was doing, and
oh
she still
yes.
stuck around. But Phyllis was just always over here, kind of like,
I'm going
kind of
like, give
turned
him a
the other
look
way.
like,
Like,
hmm well, like that first look, what's going on over there?
yeah, exactly. But then the
And
rest
he
of the time, it was just like, listen, I'm Bobby's. I don't have to deal with all this stuff, right?
don't want to know, I'm just protecting him. That's all I care about. I
Exactly.
care about my Bobby. It's the song, the Bobby's Girl song, right? I want to be Bobby's girl. Um, but the other thing too is that we had 100th episode, 200th, our 100th episode party was wonderful. And I got to fly my parents out,
Aw.
and it was a formal event, the Beverly Hills Hotel, and, full course meals and dancing and champagne. And we were walking in. I was walking with my mom and dad going in, and Linda Gray was walking in, but she was by herself without an escort. And my father walked up and said, "Hello, Miss Gray," and I introduced them. And he said, "May I walk you in?" And she said, "Well, of course." And I reminded her of that, not thinking that she would remember. And she said, "I do remember that." My dad walked arm in arm with Linda Gray into the party. So, it was the ripple effect. And for me personally, the fact that by being on Dallas, I got to do a lot of charitable events and charitable work I had entree into being able to involve people and have people help me with a lot of the charitable work that I did. And so I appreciated that.
Definitely. No, that's very good. I do want to ask you a little bit about Linda Gray as well, but let's talk about the charitable
Absolutely.
events for a moment and just a little more detail about what you were able to get involved with.
Well, I did a huge West Side Food Bank was a big, the food banks were like really not everybody's used to food banks now. This was a huge one. And I had,
Mhm.
it was at a great club called At My Place. And we did 2 nights of a concert, and it was mostly comedy. So Melanie Chardoff co-produced with me, and we had this new kid, Jerry Seinfeld, Elaine Boozler, Paul Rodriguez, who all came and gave up their time and did that. I did a Women in Show Business through Interplast Inc., which was a medical charity. I did a lot of work through United Cerebral Palsy because of my brother.
Yes.
So there were a lot of, and I played golf and played tennis. So I would go to these or Duke's Children's Classic or the Crosby or St. Jude's or Make-A-Wish Foundation and get to travel the country and meet these amazing doctors and people and medical personnel who were really trying to make a difference and raise money and awareness. So that was always a wonderful experience for me as well.
That's wonderful. And honestly, another good perk that comes along with being in a television or theater or film, any kind of
Yeah.
prominent position in that sense, where you're in the public eye, you have that kind of leverage to be able to pull some attention to good causes.
Well, I think you see that everywhere. You use it for good. You have to
Yes.
not just enjoy and believe me, as a supporting character, we certainly weren't. I mean, I'm only going to speak for myself. It's not like we were at the level of celebrity that, our main cast members were, but people did recognize us, and it was important for us to use that for good. And, I did a lot of charity fashion. There's lots of pictures out there of me in very pretty gowns and at various events for various charities. So, and anytime you can do that, anytime you can, use your celebrity, whatever that is, to make a difference is a wonderful experience.
Definitely. I agree. Just coming back to the Linda Gray topic, I just kind of
Oh
wanted to
yes,
sidestep
yes.
there. Just a little bit more. We talked a lot about Larry Hagman and Patrick Duffy and working with them, but Linda Gray was another person who, she had her rough moments on screen, but then Linda Gray in person is such a sweet,
Oh,
kind, loving person. Not that Sue Ellen wasn't. I think Sue Ellen as a character was genuinely a sweet person, and that's
oh
why
yes.
she was hurt so much by JR's actions and
Hmm.
everything. But she was a rough, tough kind of character, and the
Right.
contrast of Linda Gray with that after meeting her was so funny. Like, she's so gentle and sweet.
She is a sweetheart, and she looks amazing.
Yes,
Does she not
definitely.
look amazing? We won't say ages. We're ladies. We won't do that. But I mean, yeah, she's the sweetest thing. And they were dealing with some pretty heavy topics.
Absolutely.
When we had the panel, at the Hollywood show, and Charlene was talking about, Charlene Tilton was talking about her character with abortion, and we're
Yes,
talking about alcoholism, and it was important for Linda never to make light of that.
exactly.
Never for it to go so far gaudy and not realistic. She was in a
Mhm.
lot of pain. She loved JR, and
Exactly.
she was deeply hurt by all of it. He was flawed. She was flawed in her own way, and that's how she dealt with it. But she was still, she never hardened. She just
Yeah.
that was her way of dealing with it. And I think she always did it, with an awareness of making it real.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, but she's one of the sweetest people in the world. And I think
Mhm.
that's why it worked. And I think that's why Larry's acting as JR was always, the man you love to hate, because you were like, there's, oh no, he's not going to do that. What? No, 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 no.
It's
But
true.
but he made it entertaining, and there was always that, there was still a little, I don't want to say not innocence, but there was, because he certainly wasn't innocent, but there was a conscience in there occasionally.
Yes, that.
When something would happen to someone else, like Bobby, or there's their children, or another character. There was his, with his mother, he was always protective of his mother. I mean, there was
Yes.
that there was that little bit of knowing that he knew he wasn't doing the right thing, but it was how he chose to survive,
Yes.
and do his business. So, I think you have to always, I think that's what makes a character work, no matter what you're doing, whether you're playing the good guy, the good character, the bad character, the everything in between. There has to be something about them, we hope, that's redeemable, or that we can relate to, or you just go, it is a nighttime soap opera. It is a script.
Yes.
It's not real life. They're just play. What is it, Jessica Rabbit? I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Very,
Because
very true.
yeah, I mean, I have played some very, on stage, I played some very, I did a musical version of, oh gosh, I can't believe I have to look at the name of the show. Isn't that terrible?
That's
I
okay.
played Miss Minchin,
Mhm.
and it was in, I'll tell you in just a moment. It was A Little Princess. I don't know if you remember the children's book, A
Okay.
Little
I
Princess.
do, yes.
And she's horrible. I mean, yes, this, headmistress of this school, and she's not kind. And yet, as its story unfolds, we understand why. And
Yes.
that has to always be there in the character in your mind. So it's fun to play deliciously egotistical characters like Dorothy in 42nd Street. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
42nd Street's wonderful. That's one of my favorites too.
such a great show to do. And even, I did Aldonza, Man of La Mancha. She's rough around the edges, but there's a person underneath there. There's a vulnerability. So I think that's true with everyone on our show. I think that's why it was successful,
I do
because we were
agree.
able to. The writing was great. Writing is everything.
It's very true. It's important to not have those one-dimensional characters, and that is, part of whether we're talking about JR and Sue Ellen having, a little bit behind them. I feel like I didn't mean to say like rough and tough. That's not what I meant by Sue Ellen, but it's what you said. She
Yeah.
didn't necessarily harden, but she was able to
Had to
be
have a
rough on
grit.
the exterior and have a grit. That's the
You had
perfect
to have
word.
a
Is she was
backbone to
able to
survive.
fight back against JR and say some very harsh words. And I feel like that's what happened over the series was those two characters, just using them as examples. They had that JR and Sue Ellen versus Bobby and Pam contrast in the first
Right.
season. It was very like, these are like the bad couple who have all these problems, and here's perfect little Bobby and Pam coming in all happy and in love. But then as the series develops, it's like you got to see all dimensions of all of these characters. They're all human, they have their flaws, they have their perfections, and it was amazing to see that kind of unfold. And then having supporting roles, like Phyllis, to kind
Mhm.
of help these characters work through their flaws as they're discovering
Right.
them themselves. That really truly is what made it a good story arc and character development.
Well, and think about it. I mean, in the beginning, until they all finally, insisted on separate places. Well, Pam did. They lived in the same house together.
Yes.
I mean, I want you to think about that very carefully. And can you imagine that sort of what do I want to call it? That I can't even think of the terminology. I mean, living under that roof, that boiler,
Yes.
has to explode once in a while. Very
Exactly.
different personalities, very different things happening. So, and I think people wanted that too. I mean, you write what you think your audience wants. At
Yeah.
first, maybe you're telling them, then they inform you. And you still have to stay true to some kind of a Bible, show Bible. But I think that's why one of the storylines that as much as I missed my dear Patrick for that year, one of the storylines I really liked was, excuse me, when you had Donna and Ray Krebs and they adopted a child, and there was this wonderful story that unfortunately, when all of that flipped upside down, they didn't get to continue that story. And it was really sweet. It was they had a very real relationship, and
Yes.
it was a difficult marriage because of she didn't want to buy into that whole Ewing family. She was her own person, and he sort of had to because he was there and he was loyal to his family. And so there were some real, genuine, struggles.
Definitely. And I feel like bringing up Ray and Donna is good too, because I feel like they were the most down to earth, realistic couple. I mean, I
Yes,
feel like while everyone else was getting out of control, these two were the most just relatable and real in a lot of senses.
right, right, and
Um,
and and they talked about it. It
yes,
wasn't, and that was kind of nice too. You have to have some tension. You can't have people
yeah,
getting along all the time. It wouldn't be interesting
exactly.
television. It would be nice in real life, but you just can't have it because on television that could get kind of boring and monotonous.
Boring, yeah. Taking that
So
risk of being boring. But one other thing is, you mentioned Dynasty, and I feel like mentioning, everyone living under the same roof in South Fork is the contrast to Dynasty, because they had that sort of grand sense in Dynasty where everything was very spread out. They had this massive mansion, and South Fork, while it was still the same concept, oil companies, people with a lot of money, families with power and everything, it was much more small scale physically. Like South Fork
right,
was not that big of a house. Everybody was
no,
in each other's faces all the time. Like
oh, they had to get out of that house. Let me tell you. Well, even
exactly.
with Knots Landing, the spinoff of
Yes.
Dallas, they all lived in the same cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Which
So
is
after a while, that's where the tensions come, right? You've got that um, water boiling on the stove with a lid on, and once in a while, people have to kind of cut loose and do things that maybe they wouldn't do if they weren't, forced to that. Like with Sue Ellen having, I mean, Jer had his affairs. She ended up answering by having her own because she really just wanted his affection, and it wasn't going to happen. So.
yeah, and she kind
Um,
of came to accept that at a certain point and just said, well, then I'm just going to do what I want to do, what I need to do, whether.
but we certainly got some gorgeous actors on the show because of that.
Yes, very true.
actors, female and male. So yeah.
Very, very true. Yeah, no, That was what was so phenomenal about Dallas, that they were able to bring in so many extra people, whether it was one-time special guests or a special guest they kept for a little while and then left. But no matter what, it never took away from the fundamental characters. And that comes back to the writing, I think, what you were saying is, keeping everyone having their important storyline, being a focal point, but still having these, little bonuses thrown in now and
Right.
again.
And you also had all of the gentlemen and gentlewomen that they were doing business with, who are
Yes,
a great backbone supporting cast, right? You
absolutely.
knew all the people they were working with and what side they were on and how they were playing Bobby and JR against each other. So you had all of them, all of those voices in their heads too. So
Very true. Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a phenomenally written show and held together, and that's why a couple weeks ago we were able to have this Dallas reunion and
right,
everybody
right.
just filling the room with such good energy because everybody enjoyed being a part of it, everybody enjoyed watching it, and everybody's happy to be still talking about it now. So I've been very happy talking about this whole thing with you, talking
Oh,
about
thank
Phyllis and
you.
everyone else involved in the show, but also your own experiences in theater, music. This has been an amazing conversation. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time today.
Well, we would be nowhere without people like you and our amazing fans who just keep sending the love and know more about our characters than we do or remember. So
Very
I thank
true.
you. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. No, that's a very good point, though. People like to kind of think up their own backstories as well, too. Especially when it comes to supporting characters. They're like, well, maybe Phyllis
Right.
came from this, and that's why she was that way. I know people have their little theories and stuff too, which adds some extra
It's
fun
fun. I
to
love hearing it.
it. Definitely. So, coming to the present day of Deborah Tranelli, do you have any upcoming appearances, shows, anything to promote right now?
Right now I'm still performing, and I've been at 54 Below in the city many, many times. I'm actually starting to work with a friend of mine who as I told you, I got together with in Los Angeles. She and I are trying to work on writing a show about our experiences
Ah,
in Los Angeles as a singer. We opened for Joan Rivers and many people, and just maybe kind of having fun with a singing duo after all these years getting back together. And I'm also working on writing, and I haven't done a solo cabaret um, show in a long time. So I'm in the writing stages of putting that material together, called The
okay.
Ladies I Grew Up With, about all the amazing singers from pop and rock and folk and jazz and R&B who influenced my early music, and kind of seeing my life through the songs that I sang. So I've got some things that I'm working on right now.
Definitely. Well, a lot of cool stuff in the works. Well, best
And
of
I'm going to
luck
be
with
at
all your
Schiller. I'm going
projects.
to be at Schiller and
Okay.
in Parsippany at the end of April. So if people are around who want to come say hi, that would be great.
Definitely. Yeah. Anyone who couldn't make the Dallas event on the West Coast, now there's an East Coast chance to meet the lovely Deborah Tranelli. So that'll be awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. Best of luck in all your ventures. I hope to see all
Thank you,
these
Kelsey.
projects coming from you soon.
You too. Keep going at it. Keep writing and put your band together. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you about what you're up to.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thank you.